So you're in the market for an M2 or an M240i and you're not really sure which is the car to pick based on your needs. Well, fear not, because today's video is for you. We're gonna do a deep dive into why these two cars are so different despite being so similar. We're gonna talk performance, we're gonna see how these two cars handle back to back. We're gonna analyze the interiors as well, the tech, pricing of course, and then we'll try to sum it up and see which car is made for what person. Now first off, let's get the boring stuff out of the way and talk about price. Now across the board, all BMW products have significantly increased in price. Both this and the M2 in Sweden, these new generations have increased in price by 25%, which is massive. These two cars are similarly spec'd, and in Sweden, this M240i would be around 17 grand euros less than the M2. Now, because BMW realized that they couldn't really sell M240i's at 60k, they decided to cut down pricing by 8,000 euros on stock cars, and my car, I bought it for 52,000 euros. You do the math, that's around 25,000 euros cheaper than a similarly spec'd M2. The M2 is based on the M240i, but as you can see, the exterior is quite different. It's 49mm wider, 32mm longer, and compared to the 19-inch alloys that equip the M240i, the M2 comes as standard with a staggered setup, 19s on the front and 20s on the rear. Two 75/35s cover the front ones, while the rear is wrapped in two 85/30s. The M240i has a more traditional setup, two 25/40s in the front and two 55/35s in the rear. Except for a few parts like the headlights, taillights, doors and bonnet that are shared with the M240i, the M2 features quite a unique body kit. You can spot the larger side skirts, quite different front bumper with those large intakes, and the bulbous rear bumper with the classic BMW Quad M exhaust tips. The M2 also borrows pretty much everything underneath the body from the M4. The engine, the suspension, rear differential, steering, you get the idea. It's basically a baby M4 underneath. While the M240i is basically a 2 Series equipped with a 6-cylinder engine and the M Sport back. The interiors are very, very similar. These seats, for example, they're called the M Sport seats for the M240i. I'm not sure how they're called in the M2, but in Sweden they are optional on both cars. So yeah, basically the same seats, unless you go for the carbon ones in the M2. You've got the same infotainment system, the same button layouts, the same steering wheel. The only two major differences is, like I've said, if you get the carbon seats, which I would if I was buying an M2, but that's a different story. The steering wheel has two extra buttons for the M1 and M2, which are for the presets for the driving modes in M cars that you can save on the two buttons, and the fact that you have carbon on the dash and the center console. But other than that, these interiors are identical. Now, remember at the beginning when I said that these cars might seem similar, but they are quite different? Well, here's a quick breakdown. The M240i features a 3-liter, 6-cylinder, single twin-scroll turbocharged engine at the front. Are you with me? An 8-speed automatic transmission in the middle, and drive goes to all 4 wheels via BMW's xDrive all-wheel drive system. The M2, on the other hand, also features a 3-liter 6-cylinder engine at the front, but that one is a twin turbo unit. You have the option to choose a manual transmission and the same 8-speed that you find in the M240i as transmissions, and drive goes exclusively to the back wheels, at least in this base M240. The M240i can produce 375 horsepower and 500 Newton meters of torque, while the M2 can produce a whopping 460 horsepower and 550 Newton meters of torque. Now, are you curious to see how that translates to an acceleration from standstill to 100 kilometers per hour on both cars? Let's do that. North to 100 kilometers per hour from standstill. Of course, we have launch control in the M2. I'm gonna reset this shitty measuring app. DSC off, Sport Plus everything. Left foot hard on the brake, hard on the accelerator. Launch control. Okay. 5 seconds. Not great, because as you can see, 5 seconds. Now let's see what the M240i can do. Okay, that felt pretty fast. Whoa, 4.6 seconds. And again, this is 4.6 seconds. Now, while driving around town, these two cars are pretty similar. Similar levels of comfort or discomfort, depending how you prefer your suspension setup, because both of these cars are, in my opinion, too stiffly sprung for daily usage. You've got the same seats, the same interior, same infotainment system, etc. You get the idea. The only difference being the M2 pumps louder fake exhaust noises through its speakers. When you start pushing the two cars, that's where things change dramatically. While the M240i will stick to the road no matter how hard you push it, the M2 will try to get its tail out as soon as you touch the throttle pedal. Unfortunately, the traction control in the M2 is very intrusive and it doesn't really let you do anything crazy with it turned on. So if you want to truly see the potential of that car, you really have to turn traction all the way off. And of course, be very careful because, like I've said, the back is very sensitive to throttle inputs. The M240i's traction control system is a bit different and it doesn't really interfere too much because this car is four-wheel drive and that system can handle the eventual traction losses and can just shuffle the power around however it wants. Power-wise, at least on these back roads, is very hard to tell the difference between the two cars because you rarely get to go full throttle for more than a few meters because, yeah, it's a public road, a lot of twists and turns as you can see, and yeah, these are very powerful cars and it's difficult to get to their limits on a twisty B road. Unfortunately, the steering is pretty numb on both cars, and while I kind of was expecting that to be the case in the M240i, I was a bit let down to find out that the M2 is not that different. It is very direct, it's quite darthy or pointy, but it's not communicative like at all. You actually feel that it's assisted, and yeah, it is a bit of a shame, especially in an M car. But saying that, the M2 is clearly the better handling car of the two. It's got less understeer, it's got better balance, and overall I think the suspension works much better in the M car compared to the M240i. Yeah, it is quite stiff, but I think it also does its job in the corners. In this M240i, the suspension is also kind of stiff, but it's only stiff in a straight line, because for example, when you turn the car in, it immediately leans to the outside of the corner, and it's an unnerving feeling. I'm sure a set of height adjustable springs will fix the problem on this car, but as it comes from factory, it's not ideal. What else can I tell you? Both engines are amazing in their own right. At least on that side, you can't really fault BMW, because these two engines are as close to perfection as you can get with petrol engines in 2023. But like I said a few times, you can definitely feel the weight on both of these cars. The M240i weighs around 1650 and the M2 is heavier than an all-wheel drive car. What the hell's wrong with that, BMW? Why is that the case? A two-wheel driven car is 70 or 80 kilos more than an all-wheel drive car. How does that happen? But yeah, both of these engines offer plenty of performance, and like I said before, if not too much performance for these small back roads. So conclusions. Well, it's a tricky one, to be honest, because both of these two cars, the M240i and the M2, are very, very good cars. It's just a matter of what's your use case. You want a daily with an amazing engine up front, then that has to be the M240i. You want a car that can do the daily stuff, but also a couple or maybe more than a couple of track days every year, then you definitely need the M2. But let me know what you think about these two cars in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed for plenty more videos to come.